Hello and welcome to the Buildup with Ladbrokes. Delighted to say I'm David Gillick and I'm your host, and I'm joined by Ladbrokes ambassador and former Ireland international Kevin Doyle. Kevin, how are we?
I'm good, David. Welcome to the show. A new voice.
A new voice, true. And look, it's been a busy week and it's going to be another busy weekend of football, both domestically and across the water. If we take a look at some of the main headlines coming over from England, all these talk and all these sanctions about Chelsea, Abramovich, like, can you even get your head around the implications of that and what it means to, say, the fans, but also the players as well?
From, I suppose, purely players' point of view, I suppose the lads were out of contract who were renegotiating, all that's gone out the window. We're talking about budgets on travel and hotels and, all the side of it that sort of gets forgotten about. The big picture obviously is very serious, but just the little things in regard to players, it obviously has to be a distraction. It didn't distract them during the week. They went and beat Norwich, so they got on with it. They're all professional. They're all, I suppose, as well, we'll be looking at, is it going to be new owners or, playing well? It might be for certain players a chance to, maneuver and get a transfer and keep themselves in the window and shop window. I suppose they're all good players anyway. It'll be easy for them to move on. It's not a League One, League Two team going bust here, and players are waiting for their, next paycheck and what they're going to, worrying about their mortgage. These lads are all multimillionaires anyway. So that side of it, not a big deal to them. They're in a fantastic position, Chelsea, as well. I suppose it's not that long to the end of the season, so those players will manage. Not the end of the world. They'll get by if they have to sleep in a slightly less luxurious hotel for a couple of nights or whatever it might be. It won't be the end of the world. Stay professional, I suppose, is what they'll be thinking, and get to the end of the season. And if it's a transfer they're looking for, it won't be, I'd imagine, that difficult. But yeah, as I said, not the end of the world for them as individuals. As I said, multimillionaires. Not that, that makes things any easier, but it just means they're not worrying about whether they get paid next week or not, or whether Chelsea financially are restricted in the next few months. It's not going to affect them too much. I'm sure their savings are there to keep them tied over for a few weeks.
But I suppose when you look at it from like a performance point of view, and everything that's going on off the pitch, like, does that affect the players on a day-to-day in preparation? Like, or are they completely away from all that?
I think, it's not like a manager's changed. It's not like they're in a bad run of form, change a coach, change that thing. They're still in the same training ground. That they are insulated from it a good bit, I'd imagine. If it was they were in a bad run of form, new manager, all that side of it should affect them a lot more than this. I'm sure initially it was a shock. And for the two or three players, there's a couple of players there who were out of contract and it looked like they were in negotiations, might be re-signed or whatever. That, I suppose, for those three, it sort of merely makes up their mind what's happening and maybe it clears the way for them. Mentally, they might play better between now and the end of the season. You don't know what sort of reaction it's going to have psychologically to them, but I don't think for those individually it's as bad as for the Chelsea fans and what the ownership is after this season and going forward for them. I think it's more of a worry there than it would be for those players. I think they'll manage just fine.
Yeah, and it'd be interesting to see it all plays out, because there may be implications with season ticket holders and all this sort of stuff. In terms of your own career, was there ever a stage where there was that off-field kind of turmoil, and how did you react to it, or how did the club or the players react to it?
Listen, I went through plenty of situations where managers were sacked. I don't think there's anyone been in this situation. I was lucky enough, no clubs I was with, I suppose this is not like they haven't gone bust, but I suppose the equivalent in the past is something a club, running out of money or that side of things. Plenty of clubs have happened that. I was lucky enough I wasn't in one in that situation and never had to worry about the next month's wages or whatever. So I didn't have that. I just had plenty, which I suppose is worse, in poor runs of form, manager changeovers, that side of thing, from my point of view, would be a lot more difficult than for those players right now than what's happening.
Yeah.
And I did have, as I said, I had plenty of managers. I was on the scene for a few managers getting the sack over the years. Not proud to say I was part of that.
And we will maybe talk on that, because there has been already a lot of managerial changes and even that managerial bounce. But before we get stuck into that, just moving on to Manchester United, again, trying to get a head around what's going on there in terms of even managers. But when you look at, last week coming off the Man City game, the derby defeat, you've Pochettino now kind of waiting in the wings. PSG, didn't do well during the week. Does that now kind of, well, one, is he the man to come into Man United, or is it now with his form in PSG? Is there questions there?
There's always going to be questions over him because of the major trophy issue, not winning major trophies, But I would have been a backer of Pochettino getting the job. I don't think it changes just because of one result. That would sum Man United up if they decided not to go for Pochettino because of one result. And that's not how a football club should be run. But it seems like how Man United have been run a little bit. I think Pochettino, to me, would suit. He's going to be available very shortly, I'd imagine. Him managing PSG and him managing Manchester United are two different things. He's trying to deal with a situation there where they try to cobble together a number of, I suppose, Galacticos, as we call them, and he has to play them. And that's not how his teams play. He's all about a work ethic and a team player. No one individual is bigger than the rest, and that's not the case with PSG. So I think he would be very good for Manchester United. But if they're going to base it on him maybe having a poor start or one result with PSG or whatever, his managerial career with PSG, like just looking at Tuchel at Chelsea, he got sacked by PSG. It doesn't mean he's a bad manager just because they didn't win the Champions League. No one's won the Champions League with them. I think at the options available, he would be the one I would like. I've been saying that for the last year and a half, 2 years when he was available before PSG. I thought he'd have a great option. But listen, if I said that would sum Man United up if they went with the crowd and the newspapers or the people saying, "Oh, we can't go for him now because of that." And if they went to that side of things, well, that would just be a repeat of the last 6 or 7, 8 years or whatever it is since Ferguson left.
Yeah, and again, you touch on that kind of possible inconsistency of their results, and they're playing Spurs this weekend, who again in their own right have been quite inconsistent. When you look at Spurs last week, 5-0, really in form. But then there's defeats along the way. So again, against United this weekend, how do you see that game playing?
Oh, it's so hard to see. You'd have to think Man United will have a bit of a bounce after Man City. Embarrassing sort of performance. Spurs, though, like only 10 days ago, Conte was talking about he didn't think maybe he was good enough for the job. So it's not exactly all roses at Spurs. They come out and win 5. It's amazing. One result, beat Everton 5-0 and say, Conte is brilliant again and everything's happy there. So listen, nothing is perfect there either. I think the situation they're in, though, and the situation Man United in, I'd have to fancy Spurs in that game. Beating Everton 5-0, listen, it doesn't say much about Everton either. They have their own problems, but Man United are so all over the place at the moment. Again, it wouldn't surprise me if they come out and played really well. They have a squad of players, that do come back, bounce back. They have the ability. They have, I suppose, top class player. They have as good a squad nearly as anyone in the league. Tying that all together, though, their attitude on the pitch, getting them all in the right positions. Everything seems to. You can't pick. Most of the good teams in the league, you can sort of pick their strongest 11 and who's going to play pretty much one or two every week. You can't do that with Man United. You don't know who's going to play or what formation you're going to play. There's no consistency. So for that reason, as up and down as Spurs are, I still think they'll be. Conte will just. He's a clever manager. Another one who could have got the Man United job, maybe slipped through the net on that one 6 months ago or whatever. So I would have to go with Spurs on that. But again, nothing would surprise me with Man United. It's so all over the place and has been for a long time.
And you talk about consistency. Conte, he seems to like Doherty now, assists last week. What a return to form. And obviously, he's built that relationship up because at the start, we didn't know whether Conte was going to put him in the team. It was looking a bit up and down for Doherty. But what, performance last week, 2 assists. Really getting stuck into that.
The stuff he was really good at Spurs. It's always been, and I think that's what Conte maybe looked at to begin with Matt. It's his defensive side isn't quite as good as he is going forward. But he's playing wing back at Spurs, suits him. He doesn't have to be quite as diligent defensively. Still a lot of work, still has to be switched on. And I imagine Conte has worked on him. One of his fortes is defensively solid and strong and organised. And, he didn't play Matt to begin with a whole lot. He was in and out a bit, got no run. And just in the last few weeks now, he's really back to where he would have been 3 or 4 years ago at Wolves. He scores goals, Matt. He sets up goals. He's exciting. He's fearless going forward. He wants the ball. When he's confident, he's a really good player, really good option. Brilliant to see an Irish player doing well in the Premier League at the moment. There's not too many of them. So, nice to see Matt back. I know him. I played with him at Wolves. A lovely guy. It looked like it was going the other way at Spurs. Was talk of him, maybe there, he wasn't Conte's type of player and that he was going to move him on. But, all of a sudden, he seems to be one of the real informed Spurs players and one of the ones the fans wouldn't have been on his side, I don't think, either 6 months ago and now, seeing what he can do, seeing what he did at Wolves, why he got the move to Spurs in the first place, why people were questioning whether he should have been ahead of Seamus Coleman, who's a fantastic player for Ireland, questioning whether Matt Doherty should be the one to play there. And he's shown in his form in the last weeks why those things were said and why he got that move in the first place.
Yeah. And just before we wrap up, I am across the water, I'm going to ask you this now. You're 3 teams to go down. Okay. There's still a bit of the season left, but it's getting very congested down there. Leeds, Everton, they're leaking goals, they're dropping, their form is brutal. It's going to be an interesting kind of run in, but who do you see are the 3 to go down?
I'd say it is really difficult. I'm just looking at it here now. Like, the obvious one is Norwich, I suppose. You have to pick them. Next one is Watford. I just know Roy Hodgson at Watford. He's really good in that situation. You'd look at it there and you say Watford want to go down. But I just remember a scenario where he came into Wolves or to Fulham years ago when I was at Reading and we were mid-table at the time. He came in and Fulham were basically relegated and he went on a run with them. They went unbeaten 10 games in a row. They caught us on the last game of the season and put us down on goal difference. They're actually 2-0 down at one stage with a few games to go in the league and to Man City away. And if they got beat, they were relegated. They came back and won 3-2. So Roy Hodgson has something. So I wouldn't like to write off Watford because he's so used to that situation. But Burnley are another one. I would have tipped Burnley the last few years. I don't think they're strengthening enough over years. They lost players again. Chris Wood in January, important player for them. I'm going to go for Burnley this year. So there's Norwich and Burnley. And then Watford, Everton, Leeds, one of the 3. Everton, they've got people are criticising they haven't got a squad of players, but they've got a better squad of players than the ones around them. All depends on Frank Lampard and how he's still a young manager and he wouldn't have been in this situation, relegation battle. His first one, he's so used to as a player and as a coach, whether it was at Derby at the top of the championship, Chelsea, he got sacked at Chelsea obviously, but he was still a top of the league manager at the time. So managing Everton in the situation is totally different. Leeds with a new manager. I'm going to go Norwich, Burnley and Leeds. I think maybe Frank Lampard, he's the type of guy who might be able to put an arm around the shoulder of a player and get enough out of those Everton players who have quality players to stay up. So Norwich, Norwich, Burnley and Leeds.
Yeah, we're going to remember that and hold that to you. But look, It's going to be interesting to see it all play out. On a domestic front, we're speaking managers. Stephen Kenny signed the contract, keeps him in the role for the foreseeable. What your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think everyone's expecting it. There's what you want. I think what everyone wants to see. There's good vibe around the Irish squad, good positivity for the first time. For the last 6 months, for the first time in a good few years, everyone seems to be positive. The players seem to be confident and happy. The only worry I would have, they lost their coach. His name slipped my mind now, but a very well respected coach, and I know that the players really liked him as well. So that'd be one who he brings in there now. I know he's got Keith Andrews as well, who's very able. But whether he steps Keith up to be the I suppose main assistant or he brings someone else in, it's going to be interesting to see. But yeah, I think it was foregone conclusion that he was getting a contract, and looking forward to it now. It's exciting to see because he's had that building phase, that awkward phase to begin with, and then you get a run of form, and nice to see now when I suppose it really matters now and the pressure's on in the next year how we go.
Yeah, well, it's good to put that to bed and everyone just kind of get behind Stephen and crack on with it. On the pitch, League of Ireland tonight, you have a big game. We're looking at Rovers taking on Woes in Tala. It's a full house. There seems to be huge just engagement with the League of Ireland this year. Fans, everyone getting involved. Like for someone like yourself who's come up through that as well, you must be delighted to see how people are just engaging with it.
Yeah, it's, even little things now. You can watch any game you want. League of Ireland TV every week if you want to watch a game. Stuff like that. You couldn't do that when I was playing. I think there was a highlight show on. For a couple of years I played in League of Ireland, there was a highlight show on at 11:30 at night on a Monday or Tuesday night. And that was it. And there was very few games ever shown live during the season. Now, nearly weekly there's a game on TV. I just hope they can maintain that. There seems to be, the FAI seem to be more engaged now with League of Ireland. Just listening to Stephen Kenny yesterday and talking about improving facilities. I've been on about that for so long. Facilities need to be better. More long-term thinking, less short-term. From the clubs as well, I'm not blaming just the FAI here, from the clubs as well. They seem to just throw everything at players and contracts every year instead of maybe, taking a few years to build up slowly and do more with facilities. It doesn't have to be massive amounts. not, I suppose I am criticising Dundalk here, but I've been to Dundalk a lot and a successful team over the last years, and I covered a good few of their games, and nothing changed. I know they don't own the stadium, but it doesn't stop them doing a few bits to it in the away end, especially painting the place a bit. Things like that, perception is so important. A lot of clubs have put a lot of it in Cork City. They're not in the Premier Division at the moment, but their ground is a lovely ground for League of Ireland, and they put money into it, and it always looks fresh and looks the part. So Shamrock Rovers, fantastic facility. So I just hope we get through a season without a negative, it's always a club seems to outspend what they have, gamble and seem to drag the league down halfway through. There's a bad PR and bad perception. So I hope we can build a bit slower. The FAI engage a bit more, which they seem to be doing, and we can have a good season. It's going to be a close season. Lots of teams I don't think Shamrock Rovers are going to run away with it this year. I spoke to Stephen Bradley in the off season actually, and I never really sat down one-on-one with him and spoke to him, but really good to sit down and listen to him and what they're doing behind the scenes and how they're trying to improve and build and coach and all the little bits they're trying to add every year. So impressive stuff. There's been lots of false dawns over the years. When I left the League of Ireland, it was really going well at the time, and it was only in the space of 6 months to a year that it all fell apart, and it was a global recession. It's a little bit out of our hands, but no, there's been a lot of false dawns. I just hope this one isn't the case. We have a good season and build on it. Good few European results. Build slowly instead of trying to do it all in 1 year. Just show. I'd love to see a couple of grounds get a lot of big grants from the FAI. I know I don't have the money, but try improve places, try to get the perception, get players and people talking about the league in a positive way for more than just a couple of months. Not just now at the start of the season we're talking about now, but at the end of the season we're still saying the same thing.
Yeah, and hopefully they can build on that, like you said. All right, moving on to our 1-2 free segment. Your chance at home to win €100 cash, absolutely free. You just got to predict the scores of this week's matches. Kevin, I'm going to ask you what your 1-2 free predictions are for the weekend. I think I know the first one anyway. Manchester United v Spurs. What are you feeling?
I'm going to go for an away win to Spurs. I don't often go against Man United at home. But I'm just it's hard to back them or hard to predict anything with them at the moment. And I'm going to go for a 2-1 away win to Spurs.
Okay, and the odds on that, you got United 23-20, a draw 5-2, and Tottenham 9-4. Next one, what's next?
Chelsea v Newcastle. Chelsea, I suppose, have got the first game out of the way since these sanctions come in with a win. So they have that off their back at home. I'd imagine their support will be very vocal and there'll be a very good atmosphere there. I know, I'm not sure on the situation with away fans and tickets and things like that, but there'll be a home crowd there. Newcastle in a good run of form. Eddie Howe's doing fabulous there. Since he took over, the amount of points they've got, we would have been talking about them. A month ago, we'd have had them down that relegation picture, and it's not even mentioned now. But I think Chelsea are going to win the game. I'm going to go for a 1-0 home win. Yeah,
and the odds on that are Chelsea 1-3. You have a draw 4-1, and Newcastle 9-1. So yeah, it's fair to say who's a favourite there. And finally, you have
Arsenal v Leicester. A team who've really sort of turned it around, and the pressure is off them a little bit, constantly getting criticised. They are now one of the ones in the top four, and looking at the good few games in hand as well on the teams around them. So it's sort of a resurgent season for Arsenal, a building season. The fans don't seem to be as protesting as much. You don't see as much Arsenal TV as you might have seen 6 months or a year ago. So it's nice to see Arsenal sort of hitting a bit of form and not getting the criticism there were. I think Arteta, most people seem to like Arteta. He would be a neutral. As a neutral, you'd like him as a manager. He speaks well, conducts himself well. Leicester aren't in a great run of form either. So yeah, I'm going for a home win. Arsenal, let me pluck a score out of the sky here. Arsenal 3, Leicester 1.
3-1, okay. And the odds on that, Arsenal 1-2, a draw 13-4, and Leicester 5-1. So, Kevin, thank you very much for your time. Remember that if you are having a bet on this weekend, do gamble responsibly. You can visit gamblecare.ie for more information. We'll be back next week for more of the Buildup brought to you by Ladbrokes.